A little while ago, I posted a video called The Truth About Vinyl. It had to do with how I and many music lovers out there still enjoy playing records, even though they're objectively kinda bad. In the video, I said something like, I've enjoyed playing records my whole life, and I have fancy turntables, so I must think vinyl is the superior format, right? No. Well, so I must think then that digital audio is the superior format, right? Well, okay, it's complicated, all right? Oh boy, just roll the intro and let's talk about it. Oh my gosh. So, digital audio, let's talk about it. I guess I'll start at the beginning. I got my first digital audio player when I was 11 years old. It was just a cheap little bookshelf stereo, had a dual cassette deck, and a top-loading CD player. And it was a big deal to me. I marveled at how clean the sound of CD was, how clear the frequencies were compared to my tapes, and of course, gone were the pops and ticks and scratchiness of my records, and I didn't have to sit and fast forward or rewind through a tape to get to a song, and I didn't have to sit and try to drop the stylus into the right groove to get the right song. I could just push a button and have it. It was awesome, frankly. I really loved it, and I could tell that it was the future of music at that time. Now, CDs had been around for several years by then, but this was the point when it was really just starting to become a mainstream thing. But before long, I got the first bits of dust on my CDs, and I got my first scratches in the disc surface, which was pretty easy to do when you were putting the disc into the tray or when you were trying to put it into the case. And what would happen then when you got a scratch in the disc? They skipped anyway. So much for perfect sound forever, right? But that's kind of how things went in the 1990s for a while. We saw a couple of alternative attempts come along for digital audio formats like digital audio tape, aka DAT, and Sony was pushing mini disc for a little while in the mid-90s, but they really went nowhere on the consumer market, although they did enjoy something of a half-life for a little while in the pro audio and broadcast industries. Really on the consumer market, not. And as the decade went on, suddenly this new thing called the internet came along. We started getting plugged into the information superhighway of cyberspace, and it did not take long before we started to see those first embedded audio players on early websites come along. Does anybody remember Real Player? They mostly just played audio snippets, and they buffered constantly, and they sounded absolutely positively horrendous because there was just no internet bandwidth in those early days. It was really a little bit ahead of its time. But at least we had some pretty okay sound coming from CDs. 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz PCM was, if not entirely exciting, pretty darn listenable, and it had a lot of improvements over the analog options of the day. And especially in the audiophile spectrum, it really did gain a pretty good foothold. As long as you had a pretty good transport and good digital to analog conversion, you could get some pretty satisfying and clean sound out of them. Some people could argue, especially in those days, that they could sound a little bit hard or sterile or just uninvolving sounding. Early digital did not always satisfy everybody. Some of the early recordings were not so good, but for the most part, it was not too hard to at least appreciate the clarity of Redbook CDs. In the 1990s, it really became king. It was good enough to get us into the noughts. And sure, a couple formats did come along and try to gain a foothold as far as replacing CD on optical media, and they sounded pretty okay too, but Ultimately DVD audio, XRCD, SACD, they had limited catalogs and they were kind of late to the party when it came to optical discs, and they just really never got out of niche status. Of all of them, SACD probably had the most staying power, and it really never took off. Although, in truth, SACD did sound pretty good. But by that time, digital playback, it really had turned into a tug of war in which the convenience of it, more than the sound quality, emerged as the real advantage. You could have cleaner sounding audio on the go compared to cassettes. You could take CDs in your car, and before long, more internet integration happened. People started ripping their CD collections and their bootleg recordings onto hard drives and then trading them around on the internet. And this began the peer-to-peer era. Most of the time, the audio is compressed to absolute smithereens, usually in terrible MP3 formats, very, very lossy, because again, bandwidth in those days, there just wasn't very much internet bandwidth. And of course, hard drive capacities were not what they are now. But still, you could do peer-to-peer file sharing where it wasn't necessarily streamed off the internet. Basically, you ripped something to your hard drive, and then through the internet, a service would connect you up to another hard drive, and you could download files back and forth from each other, hence peer-to-peer networks. And of course, audiophiles hated it because for the most part, they were really bad quality, very lossy sounding formats, but the masses really started to catch on to file sharing. It was infectious the way you could just click a mouse on a computer and start downloading audio. And the more people did it, the more there became this vast ability to get almost on-demand music. Now, those of us who remember spending days waiting for a download to finish on Napster, I don't know if we could really call that on-demand, but it was really a unique way to get audio, and it definitely gave us a glimpse of the future. Now, of course, the music industry fought back hard on what they argued was content theft. It was piracy. They weren't about to let their revenue models get shaken up. They even went after casual listeners, trying to make examples out of them, and they did their darndest to shut down the file sharing sites. And eventually, they more or less succeeded, at least on a mass scale. Ultimately, though, the whole thing left a pretty bad taste in the mouths of music listeners who by then didn't really feel too bad about destabilizing the music distribution industry. Not when the big record labels and all these big players started going after the little guy. And their thirst for instant gratification and convenient access to vast catalogs continued unabated. Eventually, later in the decade, commercial streaming services did start to come along. Internet bandwidth was still fairly limited, although improving a little bit over time. The services really still had to crush audiophiles with compression to be able to serve them to customers. And that was the reality, was that the fidelity of early streaming was really not great. Although at least it did solve optical disc issues like skipping and jitter and read errors. Mechanical problems like that were gone, but kind of replaced with just really lousy, lossy sound quality. But the writing was on the wall. Most mass consumers of digital audio, they wanted immediate access to their music. They wanted convenience above all else, and that ethos really set the entire tone of digital music distribution, and it drove the standard of quality. Not quality for quality's sake, but for convenience. So the noughts were kind of a mess for digital audio, but by the 2010s, the music industry started getting past its identity crisis, and we started to see the rise of commercial streaming. Finally, we started to have platforms offering some large catalogs of on-demand content streamed through the internet and scratching that itch that consumers had for convenience and instant gratification. You could get it for free if you wanted to listen to some ads, and what's more, you could even pay a monthly fee if you didn't want to hear those ads. It was kind of nice, right? Now, because widespread broadband was still maturing during those years, generally the platforms of this era were still pretty lossy in terms of quality, but at least they weren't, the music industry wasn't throwing hissy fits in court and this sort of thing. So you had to take the good with the bad. You compromised on quality, but you got the convenience. Now, as the decade progressed and internet bandwidth did improve, we finally even saw the emergence of niche streaming platforms like Tidal and Deezer and Qobuz offering lossless quality. And at first they had pretty limited catalogs, but that improved with time too. Some of the more mainstream platforms even did start to step up quality options just to compete and get back some of their market share by offering lossless options, at least in their highest paid tiers. Now, even here in the 2020s, some of the big platforms are still lagging in terms of quality, but others have really stepped up to the point where now you've got options. And in the 2010s, we also saw the coterminous emergence of audiophile manufacturers starting to offer high-end digital streamers with top-notch conversion and wide format compatibility that could finally replace our physical digital media sources with viable high-end grade streaming options. We could now stream proper lossless quality in a high-end manner that was good enough for high-end systems. No more scratch discs. All of the benefits of on-demand, large catalogs, and this sort of thing finally were at our fingertips. But weirdly, also during this same time, we saw this fascinating reemergence of vinyl of all things. It came roaring back at the same time that digital distribution and quality really started to mature. Well, I guess there really was something to be said about the draw of tangible hard copy formats and manual effort in audio reproduction that digital streaming just wasn't offering some consumers who wanted that type of experience. Listening to vinyl was the antithesis of convenience, that you were enjoying in an objectively inferior sounding format, kind of a pain in the neck to set up records and play them, but so many people started doing it again just for the fun of it, and I think for the physical connection of it, and this was really important for some music lovers. If you want to hear more about my opinions and ramblings on that, you can check out my video, The Truth About Vinyl. I'll link to it at the end of this video. Well, now we're in the 2020s, and where are we at with digital audio distribution? Well, we've got a whole bunch of streaming platforms, and although all of them could be offering the best lossless quality, only some do, but some do. And you'll pay to get it, but it's certainly cheaper than buying hundreds or thousands of hard copies. Today's digital consumer even has some amount of access to the highest quality, master reference grade formats, high bit rates, super high sample rates. We've transcended PCM audio. We've got direct stream digital in some cases, and all of these can sound really, really good. Can they sound way better than vinyl? You bet they can. That's the honest truth. But there are some trade-offs with modern day digital audio, and in particular with digital streaming. You can't really trust the catalogs to remain static. Things like licensing deals and distribution rights can change on a whim. It's possible that your favorite songs that you listen to all the time might one day just disappear. When you go to log on to your favorite streaming platform, it might just be that songs that you had been listening to have evaporated. They're just gone. And it's really just down to sort of backroom business deals that we consumers have really no control over, so we can't fully trust the catalogs. And there's also the issue of how artists get compensated from streaming platforms, okay? As the industry reduced emphasis on hard copy digital music distribution, like CDs, and moved along to streams of single songs, not even albums now, but generally most people are consuming single songs, and they're doing it almost in a compilation or radio format. You know, as this model has changed, I think the industry really took the opportunity to kind of stick it to the artists, especially when it came to payday. You know, we've seen a number of high-level, and really musicians at all levels, and including the highest level of musicians, pointing out that they're really not making much off of streaming. They can have millions and millions and millions of streams and still not have very much money to show for it. And this kind of, you know, compared to the old hard copy sales models where they really could make money off CD sales, now artists are really just having to try and make all of their money on touring, which is its own headache and could easily be the subject of many other videos. All of this leaves consumers to kind of have to choose between their own convenience and trying to be fair and do right to their favorite artists. So I think the truth about digital audio is this. It is complicated. It's so close to being ideal. But it's kind of let down by distribution methods and uneven access to quality. It has all the right ingredients to be superior in every regard, but I think that we haven't yet struck that balance between being able to satisfy all consumers and do right by the artists and still have the people in the middle, the distributors, also getting their piece of the pie. The other issue is, gosh, over the years, digital has just really had identity crisis after identity crisis. The technology has been in a constant state of flux. If you think about all the different digital formats and codecs and just all the different ways that we've had to consume it. It seems like every few years there's something new in digital audio, and we have to make a choice about whether to upgrade old things to new things. Are old devices still going to play newer technology? It seems like there's this endless sort of merry-go-round of just things constantly changing with digital audio, and we never really seem to be able to remain static in what we can do to consume and play back modern day digital audio. And I think that has really left a lot of audiophiles in particular kind of cynical about the whole thing. As technology evolves, you know, the fact that we're seeing a resurgence of old formats and old technologies like vinyl, and even more recently now cassettes seem to be having a moment. I think that's probably a fad that will come and go. Some people said that about vinyl 15 years ago, and it just kept getting more popular. The fact that it's still popular today when we have fantastic digital audio out there really is a testament to some amount of the cynicism and disconnection that I think people are sometimes feeling with digital audio, how it's constantly in flux, how the distribution methods are endlessly changing, and how there always seems to be some set of problems that kind of in some ways can spoil what otherwise should be really an objectively top to bottom big improvement in format. So what will it take to reach perfection in digital audio? I think it really is going to be striking that balance of, first of all, deciding really at what point do digital audio options, especially lossless options, At what point do we just pick the one that works the best for everybody and sounds really good and say, let's park on this for a little while and get everybody caught up to being able to listen to it and consume it? Ultimately, we just need to, find that balance, pinning down the right level of quality that works for basically everybody, and making sure that the artists are fairly compensated and that models can work for internet infrastructure and that it can be distributed relatively efficiently by the distributors of the media. Could digital be superior? Yeah, it absolutely could. Is it now? I think arguments could be made that it really isn't quite. Now, in terms of the potential sound quality of digital, yeah, definitely it's superior. You're never going to get a vinyl record to sound as clean and clear and have the true dynamics that digital is capable of when you're listening to the best digital. But there's so many other problems that still need to be solved with digital audio. And that is what I think the truth of digital audio is, at least right now in the middle of 2025 when I'm shooting this. So I'd like to hear from you. What do you think digital Valhalla is? What's your favorite way to consume digital audio? I'd like to hear your opinion and your experiences in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, throw me a like. I really appreciate that. And if you would like to see more content like this, consider subscribing. If you have any ideas for topics you'd like me to cover, by all means, put them in the comments. Love to hear what you have to say. So, thank you for watching this one, and I'll see you next time.